TGIF, everyone. How are you? What's going on? What is happening? And how are you? I hope you guys had a great week. It was some people said it was short, some people said it was long. But if you were off on Monday, it was a nice long weekend. But as long as it was safe, that was the main thing. Because when I mean speaking of safe, it has been so much going on that has not been safe when it comes to my city. I did mention last week that I may not have a stream today, but something I viewed made me want to have the stream. So I'm going to have it as we see here. But as far as the exhaustion, I tell you, sometimes the news can exhaust you. It can just make you feel some kind of way. And I actually do. I was so excited. I'm still excited about the show. I'm not going to say I'm not. I was expecting to have a little bit more energy, but my energy had been zapped a little bit. And that was due to a situation that happened while I was out running errands today. And I will share that with you. All right. So, what I have on the screen, I'll point one. See, I think you could see it a little bit. All right. So, Kenwood Academy, that is the high school. And where you see the shots fired is where the shots were fired. Um, I guess some of the kids were going off campus to go get something to eat. And that was the right direction to go to get something to eat. The restaurants are over there. And I would say I'm going to point about, mm, I'm going to say right about here. Let me see, Lakeshore Drive. Yeah, I'm going to say maybe right about here is where President Obama's house is, I would say. And I'm going to say I was maybe right about here. Yeah, I said about right in this area. So I had a dentist appointment today, and that's where I was. And someone came in the office and, of course, mentioned that, what had happened. So I'm going to play it for you and share it. And it was just sad to hear. I'm like, a nice long weekend, last weekend. Kids back in school. It's a Friday, you're supposed to be excited. But these things happen. And I really hate to hear these type of things. But let me share the story with you. Here you go.
From detectives about a 17-year-old that was shot and killed around 12 noon today. We've learned from police that this was a student at Kenwood High School, and he may have been going off campus for lunch right before being killed. Now, take a look at this video. Detectives could be seen examining a book bag left behind at the scene, surrounded by red and yellow crime tape. The shooting happening just after 12 noon here in the 1500 block of East 50th Place. Chicago police tell us the victim, 17 years old, was shot multiple times after being involved in an altercation with a group of guys. Police would not expound on what that altercation involved. Neighbors say a black vehicle could be seen speeding away from the area as the student's body laid lifeless on the ground. One woman who lives nearby heard the gunshots and described the horrific aftermath.
It was just bone chilling. I've never ever heard anything that hard, that loud. It's like we were overseas in a war zone. I'm still shaken, pretty shaken by this whole situation. To come down here and to see all of this tape, and it looks like a war zone. Police cars everywhere. People can't even live in the area, can't even come home. They're coming home to all this chaos and anarchy.
And the brazen shooting happening about 2 blocks away from Kenwood High School. As a result, the school was placed on a soft lockdown. Now, at this time, police have not released the victim's name just yet. Authorities say this does appear to be a targeted attack. We understand that high school student was killed in the parking lot of the building in which he and his family lived. We're live on the city's south side area.
Terrible, just straight up terrible. Oh, just straight up terrible. And I really hated to hear that. I really did. I mean, you're just sitting there in the office, do, and someone come in to report that. And so I end up it taking me a while to get home. That wasn't enjoyable, I tell you. an extra 45 minutes to even get moving to my home. So that kind of tired me out too. And all of us was trying to find a place to stand out of the sun, find us some shade near or in the trees. That's where we were. But just so happened, we're going to discuss this particular subject that Ruby had brought up last week. And, she had mentioned it many times about the training of police officers. And I happened to view the video that we're going to go over. And it was just incredible to find someone that was in law enforcement just being so honest. You just won't believe the words that you hear him say. Like, wow, he actually admitted that. So it was a nice conversation that he had with another content creator named Michi X, and I was just wowed by it. So we're definitely going to go through that, and I'm sure Ruby would have more to share with us about the police training because she mentioned that before when we used to discuss, some of the stories that we would share on Saturdays, and so I'm sure she's going to have much to say. And then I have a few things to add. Just listening to the conversation, it was just so honest, really an honest conversation. So we're gonna go because my mood is just totally different today after what I've experienced. So we're going to just go into a little Friday dance, and we're gonna bring up the lovely and the wonderful classic Ruby first. Greetings.
Oh, girl, you are like I was right about to get up, go get something. Like, okay, Sean, I'm about to start the song, and it's like, but I'm gonna bring her up first. Oh, I had put my earphone back in my ear real fast. What's up, girl? How you doing?
A little tired, but I am here. How
Me
about you?
too. I'm gonna tell you something, Shar. I'm one of those really annoying people who's really good at anything I apply myself to. But that makes me overconfident and stupid in a lot of ways. I'm gonna explain what I mean. So our contractor, we finally get a contractor. And this contractor comes, and some of the jobs he started, we wouldn't have prioritized. But since he was gonna do them, right? It's like, okay, good. Something out of our hair, something done, great. But he came and started a bunch of stuff and then literally just dropped off the face of the planet. Literally, like
Wow.
just he's just been gone now for 13, 11 days, whatever. So I said, okay, well, of the jobs he had to do, some of those things I literally don't know how to do. Apparently, he doesn't know how to do them either because he started some of them and it literally caused structural instability in the house. It's fine. Um, but I do know how to install flooring. So I did the flooring in the bathroom. Cool, no problem. Everything's fine. So I get overconfident. So now there's the flooring in the front entrance. And I'm like, you know, there's this one little tricky area. It's mostly a big rectangle. There's one tricky area. It's kind of like a kind of offshoot triangle. And it's kind of just like, it's a weird area. And I'm like, oh, it's just going to be annoying and ugly to cut. And then I started looking up solutions and I found diagonal flooring. Diagonal? Diagonal flooring in a room? These pictures look gorgeous. And I'm like, I can do that. Right. So then I talked my mom into agreeing to it. Right. And she's like, isn't that going to be like a lot more cuts? I'm like, oh, it's going to be a few extra cuts. I already looked into it. No, I hadn't. I hadn't looked into anything. I wanted to do diagonal flooring. Girl, do you know how much harder I made my life doing this stupid diagonal flooring? Like, it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. I'm like 3/4 of the way done now, but it's so much harder. It's gorgeous, but it's so much harder. I'm exhausted. Like right now, I was like, okay, let me get in a few boards before I jump on the street. I'm pouring sweat. This is like day 4 now. It's not even a big area. I'm pouring sweat. My whole body hurts. But I told everyone, oh, it's not gonna be no big deal, right? So now everyone agrees with the rooms. Everyone's like, yeah, it's cool, it's cool. This was why do people let me do these things? This is the worst because I convince other people, right? I convinced
That
them
you can
because
do
if
it.
my mom had said, it's not a good idea for your health, right? Mr. Rusi says it's not a good idea for your health, but I'll convince them that it's going to be just as easy. It's going to be even easier. It's going to make that weird area that was going to be so hard to cover, it's going to make it super easy. And it did. It made that one area, which is like 2% of the floor, super easy. It made 98% of the floor extra hard, right? But that 2% got way easier. It's like,
No.
right? So I'm just saying, listen, we are all part of struggle life right now. Okay. Y'all are my struggle life fam. Okay. So I have to come and share my struggle life with y'all on a weekly basis. Otherwise, I feel like we would all feel a little empty inside, right? So you're welcome.
Wow.
But I am looking forward to this topic. I really am. I don't
All right.
think it can be reiterated enough. I think that until they enforce some of these things, I mean, Shar, listen, some stuff we brought up, you brought up as well, you know, the insurance thing.
Yes.
I don't see why this is the only profession where you have people's lives in your hands and you require zero training and zero insurance. Because it's like the only profession that you have people's lives in your hand and you need zero training, zero. In some states, they will let you go onto the street immediately. Not one day of training, not one day of police academy, nothing. Okay. And no insurance. And then they give you
Mm-hmm.
a gun and say, good luck. Seriously. It's just astronomically stupid. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I'm really looking forward to a cop I can believe in, especially like a black cop I can believe in. I'm really looking forward to that. So,
Yes, be wonderful. So
mhm.
today we're gonna have a little Friday dance because I need to warm up. I need to little, a little smile, a little something, something. So we're gonna start with a little Friday dance. That's how we can open up tonight.
All right.
Here we go.
Look at her. We gon' talk this thing over. Duval and the money walking out. Come on, come on. You a baby, baby. You a baby, baby. You a baby, baby. I'm living my best life. I'm living my best life. I'm living my best life. Ain't no making off with you. I'm living my best life. Ain't no making off with you.
All right. Ah,
Old school Carlton. Never get enough of old school Carlton. New school Carlton and the reboot. He's just not as lovable. I'm just going to keep it a buck. I don't know. Maybe they'll fix it,
yeah,
but yeah, I'm not really about him as much. Sorry.
yeah. Thanks, but no thanks.
Right? Too much rewriting of people. Just like I like Hillary being really stupid, right? Like I miss that about Hillary Banks, that she's just a complete idiot airhead. Like that was wonderful. It was a wonderful quality for her to have. Like this new one is all vain and stuff. Like I'm vain. That's cool. I have something in common, but she's too smart. She's too like witty and aware and grounded, or as the kids say these days, base. Yeah,
Mm.
just base. So let's see if this new comp now is base. I don't know what that means. I'm gonna try to keep using it till it doesn't sound stupid when I say it. So
Okay. All
I'm
right.
trying.
Share the video here,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it'll start playing as soon as I add it. Let's see.
I wanted to say is that um, I agree that there is crime in our community. I don't want to get into the depths of why that is, but there's plenty of crime in the inner cities and in the impoverished ghettos. Let's call it that, because it ain't just Black communities. The fact is that Black people feel those communities more than anybody else, but these are called the inner cities and the impoverished ghettos, right? And so crime does happen there a lot. And so that is one thing. But my remark is that police brutality is another thing. And what I don't like is when we continue to mix the two conversations, right? And what I mean by that is that one does not null and void the other. When you are dealing with criminals, criminals act the way criminals act. How do you compare criminals to people who have taken an oath to uphold the law? those are two different completely situations. You expect criminals to do what they're doing. That's why we call them criminals. You do not expect police to do what they're doing when they abuse their authority, they brutalize, they overstep their bounds, or they do these things to people because of race, because FBI, you covered a show. And there is a truth to the fact that white supremacist groups and white supremacists are racist against everybody. If you ain't white, they don't like you. If you Mexican, if you Puerto Rican, whatever you are, they hate everybody if you ain't white, right? And they have infiltrated the police force. So you deal with all these dynamics. And so you don't get to say, oh, we commit all this black on black crime, so stop talking about the police. Two are two separate issues. And I just wish people would discuss them in that manner and stop bringing up one to null and void the other. So that is the point that I was making.
Facts.
All right, so I stopped it right there. Kind of break it up a little bit. So if anyone want to
Mhm.
discuss anything, they
Like I
can.
said,
Hmm.
facts. That's exactly what I said last week. I said I am not mad that this cop or a man or whatever punched a woman in the face. That is not what I'm upset about. I don't even think he was wrong for hitting someone back. I don't think that's wrong. I have an issue with the fact when I watch a video and it's a cop interacting with, the common citizens, I can't tell who's supposed to be the common citizens and the criminals and who's supposed to be the cops. That's my issue with the video. I should be able to plainly see from the behavior of one of these people that person is the cop. This is a person who has the composure, who's trained to deal with this and blah, 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 blah. And that is a wild and out citizen. I should be able to see that very clearly. If I can't see that very, very clearly, there is a problem, right? It's like if you walked into, and I'm going to use doctors a lot in my examples today because it works. Because again, doctors, surgeons, what they hold people's lives in their hands. Okay, if you walked in to a doctor's office, let's say you were going to get some type of surgery, right? So you walk in, um, and you walk into the clinic room, whatever, and it's full of patients, right? And some
Okay.
patients are being crabby, some are screaming, some are crying, some are wiling out, some are acting impatient, whatever, right? So you go to the receptionist and you go, can I see the doctor? And one of those wiling out people in the room says, oh, I'm the doctor, can I help you? When you be like, well, hold on, you're the doctor? I thought you were just one of these patients, right? Like, how are
Um,
you not the one for sure? Like, as soon as I walked into the room, I zero in on. I'm like, ooh, he's the one with his shoulders back. He looks all calm in the middle of the storm. Like I'm just drawn to him. He looks like he has authority here. He looks grounded. Like he's the one that I would want to put my hand. If you're just yelling and screaming at some patient and da 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 and
I
acting all
get you.
impatient, I walk in. I don't want to let you operate on my heart. Are you crazy? Right? Like you should be able to tell the difference. That's just what it is. And the fact that no one has a problem when we can't, right? Or as Michi said, and I brought this up too, I don't care if they're criminals. That's literally your whole job is dealing with criminals.
They
Like
do what they do.
right. That's why we hired y'all, right? Not to be judge, jury, and executioner, but in essence to be the bounty hunter for crimes in progress, right? Like you go and you snatch these people up off the street and go put them into a little box that we contain them in until a judge, a jury, and perhaps an executioner get to them, right? But it's not your job as a cop to do any of that. And the fact that anyone can justify saying, well, they're criminals, black on black crime. I don't care. You're a cop. You know what criminals do? They do crime. You know what cops are supposed to do? They're not supposed to do
Gotcha.
crimes and then hide behind a bunch of statutes written to protect them when they commit crimes. It's not how it's supposed to work. It's crazy.
Okay. I get
Mm-hmm,
you. I got
mm-hmm.
you. All right. So we'll move on to the next section.
All right.
I like this little saying.
Oh, hold on. See, she said, I'm doing my floors. That's back pain work. Bro, I don't know if you missed that. I'm installing flooring. I'm installing, well, vinyl plank flooring in my front entrance, and right before that, I installed flooring in my bathroom. I understand your pains, sir. I have been in tears every night. It's hard. It's hard. I just put some in before I came on the stream. I feel you, brother. I feel you, my brother. I would sing for you, but apparently that causes more pain. So I'll just just send you some love.
All right. Love to share.
Policing, the profession has done a lot of damage, right? Let's just be real, right?
Mm-hmm.
Profession has done a lot of damage since the beginning of time. That's a fact. And though there's been growth, there's some departments, and I know this for a fact, 100%, that they don't care. They don't care. They operate like they're their own country. They're their own government within a government, and so a lot needs to change, man. It just is what it is, and the people are the only ones who can do it. But some police departments have set themselves up like dictators. That's a fact, and you can't tell them nothing. They're tyrannical in nature. They do what they want to do. They answer to themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and once you have power, who's trying to give that up? And so, but again, this country has to get back into the place where the people have the power over the government, and the government not the power of the people. So
Yeah, and that's why I agree with you on reform, because that's the only way that's going to get rid of some, not
yeah,
all of those things that cause people to come into policing and other roles. I'll say to your audience, because even the person in line, she was like, "Yeah, I watched your channel. You still a loudmouth." So let me this loudmouth tell y'all real quietly that if
and
y'all
save
should go
y'all.
on YouTube, and they should Google they should YouTube the Stanford prison experiment. And the reason they
Mm,
should go look at that, yeah, because I'm loud, but I ain't stupid. I don't know about you, Elaine, because you in the chat. I don't know if you're doing anything for the community. But if you go look up the Stanford prison experiment, it will actually give you
yes,
an understanding of why when people get into the position of policing. I mean, of course, it's based on a correctional facility and locking people up, but it's the same thing of being in a position of power over people,
power.
how that
Yeah,
affects people, and
yes,
then how there takes this affect the people that are around them. So, for example, the officer that's
well, wait,
abusing
wait.
power and he's riding with a rookie, this
Right,
rookie is going to probably take on his ways of
yes,
abuse more than anything else, and so it's a good experiment to go watch. They actually had to stop it after a couple of days because it became really abusive, but you would be amazed to watch how quickly these participants really act like prisoners when they
yes.
could have been like, man, get on my face and I could go home. None of them thought they could leave, and they really played into it. And the way the other students took advantage of their power, it says something about the psyche and how people can misuse that, right? So y'all should go watch that.
Let me ask you this real quick, Michi, because my thing is every person was not designed or has the capability, the mental fortitude to actually handle or wield power. It's not for everybody. Everybody shouldn't
Right.
have access to it. Policing is a profession where it's power given away willy nilly. Anybody, your mama can get it. Your crazy uncle, right? Pookie and them can get it if they can write, pass the test, and talk and do a cartwheel.
Ouch. Things to make you go, ouch.
Okay, so I would like to address this. Now, first of all, guys, there is actually, they've made movies to not just, they've done documentaries where they spoke to some of the actual participants, right, and the creators, but they've also done movies to reenact the happenings of the Stanford prison experiment. Um, and so for people to understand, a bunch of college students signed up for this experiment, right? And basically, they were randomly assigned to one of two groups. Either you are a prison guard or you're a prison inmate. Okay, it was random assignment. So it wasn't like they walked into this knowing which position they'd be in or whatever, right? Some people were friends or related to someone from the other side, whatever it is. Now, everyone knew that participation was voluntary and they could leave at any time. A couple people eventually did before they stopped the prison experiment. So I wanted to clarify that first, is that some people did leave. But the reasons why they left or they were pulled out was extreme. When I say extreme, I mean the amount of, some people committed suicide after this experiment, by the way, or suffered really extreme damage, and that was from both the prisoner side and from the prison guard side. And so you think to yourself, well, obviously the prison guards, absolute power corrupts absolutely. They were doing terrible things to these poor prisoners, and so the prisoners couldn't handle that afterwards. The prison guards, the thought that these good people, some of them were really good people, they never would have thought they'd either do the things that they did, or that they'd stand by and allow those things to happen, right? Some of them were very scared, because when one prison guard stood up and said, like, no, the other prison guards started conspiring, and in essence started treating that prison guard like they were a prisoner, right? And I mean, it's really something to observe that a bunch of Stanford, right, just college students, they're just normal kids, right, devolved in such a rapid time. And it shows you this is when he said, I have to disagree with the officer. Is he an officer, a detective? Who's he?
Um, he is no longer on the force,
Okay.
so
So
we'll say he is retired.
okay. So our retired officer, detective,
Yes, we could say officer.
officer. Okay, retired officer here. He is wrong when he said that not everyone can handle power. Nobody can handle absolute power. Right, and that is an issue. Right, he said it's tyrannical. Right, it's corrupting,
Did he
and
say power itself or absolute power?
well, he said power. Right, and he
Okay.
said the problem is though the police system is a system of absolute power, right? Who can question you? Who can speak up against
Oh,
you?
okay. I see what
Who
you're
is there for you? Right? It's absolute power, right? The police are
saying.
accountable
Well,
to nobody. They don't even have insurance they have to be accountable to. They aren't accountable. So it is, in essence, absolute power. The only
absolutely.
people you're
Okay.
answering to are other cops. And like you said, it's their own system. So
Mm,
you're accountable to nobody. So it's absolute power. And I think that that is really where, when we start talking about, we want checks and balances in there, like insurance, right? It's to
yes.
knock off that absolute power edge. I think that is, it's such an important point to make, because I think that that is exactly where that corruption comes in. It's like, you might have been a good person, but then you got all these corrupted people. It's absolute power, right? Fear of reprisal, right? The only people you're answering to want you to behave like the corrupted people. What do you do? What do you do? And then you get people on the street who will spit on you, who won't appreciate the
Hmm.
fact that yesterday you know, when you think about it, right? It's like, I can see how this system creates what it
Hmm.
creates. I can see it. Sorry, I know, big long random tangent. Hi, Vonda. Sorry,
Greetings. Greetings. How are you?
Hi,
my bad.
Ruby. Hey, Shar. Thanks for
Hey,
having
girl.
me.
Anytime. What's going on?
Not much. I mean, I would agree with Michi that I think that it's two separate situations with regards to police brutality and the infamous black on black crime. Yeah.
Mhm.
The black community has a lot of things going on in it, and I just don't like when the two get melded together. You know, if
Yeah.
we're going to talk about police brutality, let that be the subject. You know, let's work on that. You know, get some things in place or in order so that it's not that way. But to be honest, I don't know. I don't see that happening. Um, Police have been around for a long time, and we all know the reason they were brought about. You know, they were,
Yeah.
rounding up the slaves. You know, so I mean, that the police system is deeply embedded in this systemic system that we're in.
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know what the solution is with that. I mean, outside of the whole system changing, and I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I agree with you. And what I'll do is later is find out what he's doing, his projects, and I'll link it in the video so people can check it out And if they want to
Mm.
join and help out, please do so.
Cool.
Okay, I'll play some more here. Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. That
So
doesn't sound good.
There it
Oh,
is.
okay.
when I look at the Stanford experiment, you're absolutely correct. It really exposes human nature, right? When you have people who aren't strong enough to wield power, and this is in any dynamic, whether it's just a person with wealth or it's a person who's a doctor, right? It's something about a person who feels like they have authority over someone beneath them. A lot of people on average cannot handle that. So the question would be, and this is one of the things that I think about a lot when I'm coming up with reform policies for policing. In your personal opinion, though, because I have, and maybe we probably should save this for the interview, but I'm just really curious. Power comes with the position.
Yeah.
Is there a way to where you can how do you not give police power? They need power to do their job, but we know power corrupts. So
Mhm.
how do you keep a person from being corrupted from the power they need to say do their job?
But power doesn't corrupt everybody. So I think there
That's
are some
true.
things that we can definitely do. And I
Mm,
think then after you do certain things, like for example, we both agree that somebody should not be a police officer, either even in a position of any type of power. I feel until of great power, that they should be at least 25 or older because psychologically their reasoning is developed, so they're not running on emotions to where they're doing something because somebody done made them upset or their biases. They're
right.
thinking more rational at that point. They've lived more life. I also think
Okay, I have to agree with her on that. I thought back when I was 25 and was just thinking, what was my thinking like? Was I more emotional, had more control? Let me think about it. And I'm like, ooh, yeah, more emotional, less control. I agree. Okay. So I would say 25 is and up also. That's my opinion on it.
The only reason why I mean, I think it's a good point, but the only reason why I would disagree is because most people who join the police force are younger, right? We'll say under the age of 30. I think some of them might be right around that age because first they go through the military a lot of times, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then they come out and go into the police force. So I think they're right around that age. And I think that most people who join the police force, regardless of race or other demographics, they want to do good for the most part, right? Even the ones who end up really corrupted and whatever, they start off all bright eyed and bushy tailed, right? And you see a lot of cop shows address that and call them green, right? And it's like the corruption, the cynicism, the negativity coming from the older folks is actually what slowly beats that out of them, right? And makes them, well, if you can't beat them, join them and join into the corruption. So I'm not sure that that would be an answer. I think that part of the issue is the way we frame the fact that police have power. And I like I said, I don't think anyone can handle power, especially to the point of absolute power. I don't, and I do think that police generally right now it's a system of absolute power. I think that when you find people who have quote unquote handled the power well, it's not that they've handled power well. It's that they don't see it as power. They see it as privilege meets responsibility, right? So while they understand that they have the privilege of having authority, they also feel that they have a responsibility, right? The way a public servant really should feel. And so I do think assessing for those characteristics, right? Like how would you see this? Would you see this as yes, I have the power, or would you see it as wow, this is an honor and a privilege. God, so much responsibility attached to this. It's almost scary, right? I would rather someone who perceives it that way, regardless of age, to be in the position they
Hmm.
have a gun and a stun gun and power over me and my the citizens or whatever. That's kind of how I see that one.
Okay. I understand that and I can agree to that. But as far as with the age, I would agree with they're 25 and older will
Mm,
probably be a little bit better in
mm.
decision making. Vonda, would you like
Oh
to
yeah.
add to that?
Well, with regards to, 25 or older, I would have to agree with that because I've been 25 and I'm a much different person now than I was at 25 or,
Hmm.
younger than that.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that this kind of makes me think of, and I know this is a movie, so I don't want people beating me up, but okay, for instance, let's just say that the movie Training Day. You have, Ethan Hawke with it, which is the young new guy coming on, you know, and he's very idealistic and he wants to get the bad guy and he wants to do everything right. And it's like, yeah, I'm here to do, to serve, protect and serve, only to get on the force and realize, oh my God, I'm working with a bunch of criminals. You know, it was like that third wall was taken down, and he was very disappointed and he was hurt. But realistically, there's no way in hell the way that dude was, he would have walked away alive. If
Hmm.
the police force is corrupt, and there have been several movies, and then there have been some, true story movies, like for instance, Serpico, with Al Pacino, where, or even what where cops had to, turn on other cops. There's a strong code within the police force. And if you're, an all American kid and you're like, oh, I just want to, serve and protect, and that's what you think it is. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, it's not really like that. It's kind of like that, but it's not really like that because I see a lot of shady and shifty stuff going on. And it's like, I mean, to me, that would just be such a disappointment. A complete disappointment. I can just say, as that movie continued, what was the next story? I can't say that dude stayed on that force. He had to have left. He would have been dead on his next assignment because he
Hmm.
totally went against the whole corruption of it all. So I mean,
Right.
my thing is it so corrupted? Do we know if it's so corrupted that and it goes way back. It goes back to the beginning of this country. You know.
Hmm. Well, it's funny because they do a lot of studies that apply to this area. Maybe not directly like police psychology or whatever, but one of the interesting things about humans, right? There's this thing called hindsight bias, right? And so they make people pick out, like, say, out of 6 paintings, right? The one that they love the most, the one they absolutely hate, right? And then whichever one they love the most, they say, I'm going to send you this one, and whatever. And so they pick out the one that they love the most and the one they hate the most, right? And then in a few months,
Mm-hmm.
the experimenters send them the one that they hated the most, right? But when people open the painting, almost universally, it's not like every single person, it was a really high percentage, like over 90% of people
Right.
will say, yes, I loved this painting so much, right? Even though that's the one that they hated, right? But it's like this hindsight bias. It's like you almost forget that that was the one that you hated. You've seen it before, it's familiar. They told you they're going to send you the one that you love, right? And so when you open it, even though you absolutely hate everything about it, for some reason, you will rewrite that history in your mind and end up, not only do you love this painting, okay, but you love that painting that you hated, right? More than if they had sent you the one that you loved. This is for real. This is the real studies that they actually do.
Mm-hmm.
So, now you think about that. So you wanted to go and serve and protect and blah, 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 blah. And then you get there, there's all this corruption and whatever. And it's nothing like what you thought,
Yeah.
right? But then a few months later, you find yourself engaging in exactly the power grab and the corruption and the whatever. And you think all along, this is where you want to be, right? Because these are like tricks that the human brain does. So that way we honestly aren't like depressed and wanting to jump off a cliff all the time. Like seriously, these things really happen. Um, or like
Mm-hmm.
conformity experiments where they tell people that they're at a switch, right? And if the person in the next room that they can't see answers a question wrong, you have to shock them with electrical volts, right? And even when people have to keep turning up the dial and now they're crying, the guy in the other room is screaming stop, right? If the experimenter is over this person and says, no, you have to press the button, they'll press the button while crying, but they'll still press the button, right? And shock that person till they're maybe unconscious or dead or whatever. Right now, there's no one actually in the other room, and they find that these experiments are, they're very psychologically damaging to the people. So, they're not done very often. But that just goes to show you, like, it's not just bad people. It's not just, a certain kind of corrupted person or that person who was a loser in high school and whatever.
Right.
Everyone, humans are susceptible, very susceptible to this, right? And when you have, as Vonda said, a system that was built to catch slaves and be merciless towards them, right? And it's the same system with the same checks and balances built into it that it
Right.
was built into back then. Like, how do you expect it to produce anything but what it's producing?
Right.
It's not possible.
Okay. I hear you. All right. Let's play a little bit more.
That they should be required college degrees. And one of the reasons why I believe college degrees is because if you spend 4 years on a college campus, you may be sheltered in one kind of a community all your life and only know what you know about races through TV. So let's talk about white people and how they're conditioned, since people think I only talk about black folks. So if white kid is living in the suburbs, they've never really had any interaction with many black people. They watch TV. We already
Right.
can agree all they do is project the negative stuff.
Yeah.
And so they don't know anything about black people. So then you become a police officer and you roll into the ghetto. You only know what you know on TV, and everybody is a thug. All the women is prostitutes, and they all crazy, and they gonna get you if you don't get them first. And
Right.
so that's what I mean by that. If you go to college, you're going to sit next to people from all walks of life. You might roommate with a black boy for the first time. You're going to see the basketball team, and you're going to get to meet different people from everywhere, and you begin to socialize. Socialization is a big thing that we don't think about in life when we place ourselves and our children in positions to learn how to grow in society. So becoming cultured and traveling or putting them in a position where they learn more, I think college should be mandatory. You should be 25 years old. You should have to have a college degree. Of course, they would have to pay more. And of course, I think that officers just should have simple checks. You know how many officers are on the force and later they'll tell you, oh, they're in these Facebook groups or they put racist stuff on their Facebook page? Like, you could go to get a job as a telemarketer, and if you have a Facebook page, they're asking for your social media. You know what I'm
True.
saying? So why y'all ain't even just checking the social medias of these police officers? It's
Mhm.
just simple stuff they don't do. It's a lot of checks and balances after that. So I think once somebody is in a position where you can do the best, you can never have 100% of anything in a system like we have, right? And
Right.
so you can do the best you can do, but then that's where checks and balances come in. You don't just make people police officers and not train them, but also in their training, do you evaluate their mental evaluation? Y'all got to shoot somebody for somebody looks at your mental situation. Like, how
That's
many officers are
true.
on the force who might be bipolar, who might
That's
have all of
true.
these issues, and nobody's ever given them a psychological evaluation? I think y'all should have psychological evaluations before you could be an officer.
Okay. For the college degree part, I think there is in certain maybe cities that they have a particular section of people that come out and talk to people that are in distress. So, of course, this is not every community to evaluate if that person is having a mental, breakdown or something like that. Now, for that particular position, I think it would be great to have a degree, be over 25, and be able to be called out, whatever that department is, because it does exist. I just forgot what the unit is called. And it can come out and help the person that is under distress, because there have been people that were mishandled, no longer here, because they just did, some of the officers did not understand what the person was um, going through or doing. But for that particular degree, I think that'll be great. Now, she mentioned, it sounds like she's saying stay on campus. Now, that's not going to be always possible for everyone. So, I don't know about that part, but to learn enough about the psyche for a particular position to help people, to be able to recognize the sign, to be able to talk them down, um, I think that would be great. That's my opinion on that. Anyone like to add anything?
I don't think that in okay, so the first thing I think is this. In Canada, there's a course called Police Foundations. College, apparently there is a degree program as well. In university, college here is like community college for y'all, I think. So it's like a 2-year or 3-year diploma. That if you wanted to elevate in the police force, like if you want to join the police and you know you want to eventually get up higher, sergeant, whatever, you have to actually have police foundations. You have to have that course. Not to be an officer, I think you just have to go to police academy for that. But if you wanted to be in charge, you have to have police foundations. So that's the first thing. It does certainly exist as like there's a curriculum that already exists, not for anything, but America has already taken curriculum from Canada's lead before, because Harvard, in their current method of teaching, actually comes from McMaster University in Canada. So, I mean, it's not like it would be a hard stretch for them to be able to incorporate that curriculum, because we do have the same type of school curriculums as far as post-secondary. So that's the first thing. Yeah, right. Now, the second thing is, though, and this is really important, is that the police cannot and will not have enough education in the human behavior, in psychology. I mean, if you take a couple courses in psychology, there's names for it, right? But like people will take a psychology course and then they'll start diagnosing themselves or their loved ones or their friends with all kinds of stuff, right? Because like they learned like this term and it's like, wow, wait, everyone's a narcissist. Everyone has bipolar disorder. Everyone has depression, right? Because like, yeah, technically you need a lot more education and you really need like a lot of in-depth training in order for you to be able to assess certain things. So I think that in that way, police should never be called for mental health crises. And if someone calls 911 because of a mental health crisis, or a suspected mental health crisis, including addiction, that someone else should be called along with them. So, for example, in Canada, there's something called COAST. There's a few of them depending on the different city that you're in. And basically what they are for crisis intervention. So you call the police, it's a mental health issue, whatever, COAST shows up with them. And so the police are there just in case any type of force stuff happens and they need to subdue someone, put someone in handcuffs, whatever, right? And the COAST people or the mental health people are there to talk you off the ledge, right? To assess the situation, assess the behavior from far away, and inform the cops of what to do, because they have I mean, if you think about how long your train would be 7 or 8 years that you go to school just to become like a therapist on the master's level, right? There's no way they can cram that into, a few 4 or 5 years of police school. Like they just can't. So I think that there should be mental health crisis people or mental health assessing people who have gone through, they have their therapy, at least master's or PhD, and therefore they work in the police department, they are officers or whatever, but they have these specialized things that they do, right? Just like hostage negotiators or whatever, right? We have other specialized positions within the police force with people who have different types of education. And I think it should be the same when it comes to mental health calls.
Well, that's a good idea with regards to protecting, the mentally challenged or ill people. That's not a place for the police. There should be professionals who are, trained to deal with that. Not that a police officer shouldn't have some sort of special training. With the amount of power, absolute. In any situation, most officers have absolute power in that particular situation because they can make or break whoever it is that they've come into contact with. And nothing happened to them. Doesn't matter what they do. And that right there is the key to me, is that they have that power. Now, something like, mental health issue, they want to, find ways to make sure that, mentally ill people are not being, slaughtered by the police. So yeah, something like that could be very beneficial.
Like,
Um,
think about how many times just me and Shar did during the news stories of either wellness checks on Black people, right? Or calls because of a mental health crisis with Black people, and the Black person ends up dead. And they're not violent and they don't have a weapon, right?
exactly.
But the
And that's
cops don't know how to deal with it.
and that's where I was kind of
True.
going, because with the subject being, how do we stop police from, killing Black people with impunity? Okay, when you say that, who's going to turn around and look? Black people, because Black
Mm-hmm.
people are really the only ones who care about that particular subject. You don't see a bunch of white people like, oh my God, yes, that's terrible, and I just don't think. No, to be honest, it doesn't affect them. They don't care. They're like, oh, that's terrible. But anyway, what I was doing yesterday, they don't care.
Mm-mm.
So it's like, in order to get, any type of assistance, it's not going to come for just Black people. And it's sad that that has to be said,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not going to create a whole big movement. Oh my God, you know what? Let's help these Black people. Let's help this 13%,
Nope.
this country. Let's do it. It's not going to happen.
Mm-mm.
So the only way to do it would be to, come through, let's say, the back door. What
Mm-hmm.
about the mentally challenged? Although, like you say, you notice, in these situations, wow, a lot of these people are Black. Okay, let's get something implemented, so that, police are not involved when there's a wellness check, or, there's, someone who has a, mental, incapabilities or whatever, so
Mm-hmm.
they're limited,
Right.
so, I mean, hey, that's a start, and I hate to sound like, such a Debbie Downer, but in my heart of hearts, when we're talking about the system, there's no way on God's green earth the system's gonna ever be changed from the bottom up. It's just not gonna happen.
No.
Just not gonna happen.
Definitely not. Definitely not. And I think that it's a good place to start with the mental illness factor, because I
Yep.
do think that honestly some good cops get caught up because they're trained, I mean in every profession, they say when you hear hoofbeats think horses, right? Don't think zebras. And so 99%, 95%, maybe 90% of the people they encounter on a daily basis are not mentally ill. They're just, common folk or criminals or whatever, right? So they're going to be thinking horses. They're not going to be thinking mentally ill when this person starts charging them, when this person does something weird, right? And then they're going to think, well, if this person is just a normal person and they're reaching into their pocket, they're probably trying to grab a gun. Right? And this is the problem, right? They don't know how to evaluate that person is mentally ill from 500 feet away. They don't know how to evaluate what kind of mental illness this might be, how to deal with that, what's the level of danger to self and others with that type of mental illness on average. They don't know how to do that. And I think that if we can give them that credit and say, it's not y'all's fault, right? And we think it kind of sucks that some good cops get caught up. So why don't we have a system in place where maybe 25% of the police force is actually these are therapists first, people who've gotten their master's or PhD in psychology, right? Trained therapists, maybe forensic psychologists, whatever it is, right? And 25% of the police force are these trained therapists. Maybe they're part-time duty, maybe they're going to be on call duty overnight and whatever. That way, when y'all get calls, you call in one of these people with y'all, and that's going to save a lot of asses. Right now, I think that if we proposed it that way, they'd be more willing to listen. If it's like, this is what's in it for you too,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So I have returned, and let's see how far I got. I did, instead of doing a file share, I'm just sharing a tab. So let's see if I can find where I left off.
should be 25 years old. You should have to have a college degree. Of course, they would have to pay more. And of course, I think that officers just should have simple checks. Social media. You know what I'm
Sure.
saying? So why y'all ain't even just checking the social medias of these police officers? It's
Mhm.
just simple stuff they don't do. It's a lot of checks and balances after that. So I think once somebody is in a position where you can do the best, you can never have 100% of anything in a system like we have, right? And
Right.
so you can do the best you can do, but then that's where checks and balances come in. You don't just make people police officers and not train them, but also in their training, do you evaluate their mental evaluation? Y'all got to shoot somebody for somebody looks at your mental situation. Like, how
That's
many officers are
true.
on the force who might be bipolar, who might
That's
have all of
true.
these issues and nobody's ever given them a psychological evaluation? I think y'all should have psychological evaluations before you could be an officer.
Well, we do have that, but it's easy to circumvent around that, right? Like even after my accident, I had to go and see a therapist. After my shooting, of course, I had to see a therapist. So, but it's ways around that. I mean, people can fake it, right?
Mm.
So I think to your point though, they're just I think there's not enough oversight over policing. I think we can all agree on that.
Yes.
I think it's too much power, not enough oversight. I think that's the problem with government, period. That again, there is a why don't people want transparency? Because there's shit they doing that they got no business doing, right?
Right.
Because if it's not
Mm-hmm.
an issue, then you'd have the doors wide open. Any police department that makes it difficult to be transparent, it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just there's really no way around it. Like if you are avoiding transparency, you're an issue, you're part of the problem. We
Mm-hmm.
know what it is at this point in this stage in the game. Doors should be wide open in police departments. And so it's just that people want to try and preserve as much power and freedom. They look at freedom as power, which it is, but again, where you cannot see corruption can form. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to get rid of.
All right, so that's a little break right there. The honesty. I just was just so amazed. I said, wow, to hear that. He's like, wow. And then he even inserted himself. He said, after my shooting,
Mm-hmm.
I was evaluated. And he said, hey, but you can fake it. There's ways around it. He said, there's ways around it. I'm like, wow.
Mm-hmm. But he's slightly misinformed also. Um, and any person, again, who's honest and has ever taken a psychometrics class, psychometrics is the people who make tests for everything, including your mental health and well-being, including the ASVAB to get into the military, including police evaluation, including all those things. It's written by psychologists. Now, the interesting thing about the tests to approve both military and police for things is that they are not looking for what you would assume they'd be looking for. Like, for example, they are actually looking for you to have some sociopathic traits. They're looking for you to be compliant to, say, the company line or tribalism. Right, they're looking for you to have a lower level of empathy for others, right? For outside groups. They're looking for these traits and qualities. So, it's like, yeah, you can fake that you're over your PTSD or whatever from a shooting, right? But when they're evaluating, like when some people have, written the test, they've tried to get into the military or police countless times and they're like, I can't get in. What's wrong with me? Sometimes it is because you got some really messed up issue you don't know about, but sometimes it's literally because you think too critically. You didn't show enough passivity. You showed that. No, I'm not even kidding. Like, I wish I
I
was
believe
kidding.
you.
It's like,
I
yeah,
believe you.
it's like
Yeah.
these traits, the traits that make the perfect minion to an evil overlord. That's what they're looking for. Right. And so it's as much as it's like, it would be nice to be like, oh, some people just fudge the test. No, some people, like this guy, for example, right? As much as he's a good person because he bounced out of that system, but you know, the way that he speaks and carries himself and whatever, I think he's a good soldier, right? And what does a good soldier do? Follows orders. I think that was the trait he rated very high in that. He rated very high in like all for one for all, like we're all a team and we're down for the team. I think he rated really high in those types of traits and characteristics, and he's Black, so you got to meet your quotas. And so it's like, great, right? And you're hoping that the culture will take care of the rest, right? And I think that's really the sad and unfortunate part about it, is that no, the police systems are made up of so much corruption because that's how they want it. It's what it is.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying that's how they want it?
Yep.
Wow.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't know. I have to think about that one. That's how they want it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But I'm going to pause right here, and we're going to give a shout out to Mr. DJ Music. He has supported the channel. He has made Sheed sing. So, Sheed, you know what to do.
All right.
Hit it. Thank you, Sheed.
Thanks. I mean, and thanks, music. I thought you were gonna say make Ruby sing, but it's cool. It's cool. No problem.
We'll get you next time, Ruby. We'll get you next time.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you. Thank you.
Not
Anyone want to
tonight,
donate?
though. Next time on another night.
Oh, okay. I'll be ready. I'll keep my voice warm. I'll get some salt water from now.
me. Okay. Let's see. I don't think I have anything to add right now. Just like I said, I was amazed at the honesty, so I'll leave it there. Vonda, did you want to add anything of this past clip?
Well, what he said with regards to being able to pass mental evaluation, yeah, you can fake that because they do test you for that. But the reason why they let some of those people go by, I'll never know. I mean, here's another story. I watched a crime show where there was this girl, and she was a Black girl, and she was a police officer, and she ended up committing this horrible, horrible crime. But she was really jacked up in the head, and what made it so bad is that she was turned down, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 times by the police force because she didn't pass her mental evaluation. So how do you now, for them to just keep letting her, well, go and take the test again. Yeah, go and take it again. This time you're going to pass. Wink, wink. She passes, and she went on to commit this horrible crime, murdered these people, and it was crazy what she did because the way that her mind worked, it was a very violent and horrendous crime. And I'm like, oh my gosh, how did she pass? But she didn't pass the first time. She didn't pass the second time. But third time, they were like, just give her the badge. Let her be a cop. And she went on to become a menace to society with the badge.
Guess they said, we can use you for this unit over here. Pass.
Thank you. No, that's exactly what happened. I'm telling you, it's actually incredibly because psychologists actually make these tests, right? It would be really easy if the common person. I mean, even like me with my education in it, I would have to study psychometrics for years, and even then, my tests would probably be very flawed at the beginning, right? But it's very different. They actually have like these inventories already made, and a lot of the inventories overlap and cross-check. And while you're answering regular questions, it's checking for a bunch of different things, not just your traits, but it's checking for if you're lying, if you're trying to fudge the test, if you're malingering, if you're like, it's testing for a bunch of things all at once. And it just seems like a normal, rating scale or yes or no thing to normal people, right? So it's actually very difficult to fudge the test. So whenever this does happen, I'm like, no, they knew exactly how this person scored. Normally, if people can't get in and it's because they're like super sociopathic, it's also because they have a low compliance to authority. As in, they don't mind that you're a sociopath on the streets, right? They just care that you'll listen to them if they tell you to stop, or you got to rein it in, or only do it after 9, or only do it in the Black community, right? Like whatever they want to make sure that you're going to listen.
A maniac,
Yes.
Control a maniac. It's like, okay,
Exactly.
use it over here. Unleash her over here. It's like, no, it's not working.
Exactly, right? That's what they did with this chick. They said, okay, you know what? If we just aim her in the right direction, I'm sure it'll be fine. Let's let her in because we need a few more people to die. Like, that's really what it was, right? She rated too high on the sociopath scale. She rated too low on the empathy scale. She rated too, like, she was too extreme, right? And they said, okay, and she also rates very low on her ability to follow instructions, conform to authority, conform to a group. And so she's not a good fit. And they said, we could probably just aim her. Right, aim her and then let her be the fall guy. And
Because you got to think about it.
She was clearly a misfit, and I'm just like, what the hell? But she was violent. You're right. She was a sociopath. You know, she befriended these people, and she knew the type of money that they made in their restaurant. And when they would close the restaurant, they would let her. You know, she was the cop. You know, so they would let her come in. You know, and she was just like, you know, she was like she was casing the place. So she was in their presence when they were, you know, handling, you know, their business, you know, money and counting the money. And she just took it upon herself, like, oh my God, this is a great lick. I'm gonna try this. And she had the assistance of, and then on top of that, her being a cop, she had a thug boyfriend. Okay, downfall of the Black woman is the thug man. But she had a thug boyfriend who was just more than happy to, you know, carry out this whole thing. So it was just a whole misfit. They went and they waited. They tried to get the money and proceeded to slaughter the entire family.
My goodness.
One of the people, one of the family members hid. And because they hid, they knew it was her. So she called the police and, you know, called it. Oh, yeah, there's been a shooting and this is all this going on. And so she's sitting up there telling them. And so the person, when the other cops got there, that person came out and she was like, oh, my God, so you were here. And that person ended up, you know, being able to tell. But they hid. Had they not hidden, and if she had found them, she was going to kill them. She slaughtered the whole family. It was a family business. A Vietnamese restaurant killed everybody, just slaughtered the whole family because, I mean, they were making some buku money. You know, it was a lot of money that they were making and taking in. I mean, it was a restaurant, popular restaurant, and she was the security guard watching that area or whatever. It was like a strip mall or something. And so she befriended them and she would go in there, you know, they would feed her and stuff like that. So I'm sure she never paid for her food. And she was like a trusted family member, only to have her thug boyfriend come in and rob and they kill everybody. Who she remind me of? She remind me of Jukebox from what is that?
That show.
Yeah. But she was a terrible cop. She was terrible.
Wow. That lady was psycho. Okay.
Yeah, she was young. She was young. I'm going to tell you, this lady was under 30. I want to say she was under 30 years old and she did this.
Okay.
Wow. Well, hey, back to the point of 25 and over, right? I mean, as it is, your brain's not fully formed. You're not actually fully mentally an adult until you're 25 anyway, right? But then you get these people who are like her, right? So if you don't develop emotionally, mentally, properly, right? If something stunts you in your path, like you could be 16 years old or 14 years old when you're 35, right? And they absolutely should be scoring for these things. And it should be like, you know, I mean, if you think about it, right? If we were all to want to build an ideal police academy, right? Or police force, what they are actually looking for versus what we would think would be best are two very different things. Right. I'm just telling y'all, and it's just because my professor who had taught me psychometrics, she was Australian. She actually lived in the States for 20 years before coming to Canada. And so she was talking about just the differences because actually that was what she worked in. She's always worked in the area of psychometrics. And so she was the person who was scoring the ASVABs and the something else, because you need a psychologist not just to write the test, but to score the test correctly. It's not like a number system, like when you're doing like a quiz in Cosmo or something. If you pick 4, get 3 points. Like, no, it's not like that, right? And so she said, like, it was almost horrifying to her. She said, to some extent, Canada is slightly better, but only slightly. Only slightly.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's the propensity for violence, as far as, like, you know, being able to shoot someone in the head, not care, is less of a desire in Canada. Um, but that's just because we have less guns in Canada, right? So it wouldn't be as desirable. But the rest of the trade, she said, it's horrific. If most people knew what it was, like, they would never let their kids sign up, they would never become cops, they would never call a cop. If they really knew what underlying traits people were looking for, never. But it's a scary thing. It really is.
Okay. I'll say this before I play the clip that to your point of they're looking for people like that. I had to think about the fact that when they do certain, I don't really want to use the word stakeouts, but investigations that be going on for years, I had to keep, put that in my mind like, hey, they're looking for a particular person. I get it. If you're staking, well, if you're investigating something for year after year after year, and you get this one applicant that you can use for your purposes, then yeah. So I do agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'll play some more.
Too, the
I agree.
police should be the type of job that there are certain things that are just not accepted. And if you get fired from one department for misconduct, you shouldn't be able to be hired at another.
Correct.
Those things should stand.
Correct.
And I think those are the type of things that will weed out the bad people.
Agreed.
Also, I want to say too, somebody was saying about the college degrees and you don't need them to be cops. So let me be clear. I know that socializing is one thing, but another reason why I think that police officers should be required to get degrees is because when you go to school to get a degree, a bachelor's degree especially, you have to take a whole lot of classes, which are your main course classes you have to take, where you have to learn psychology, sociology, psychology. So what happens is you also will learn a little bit more about abnormal psych, right? You're going to automatically learn about disorders that people have and how you can kind of deal with those things. So
Identify.
you're going to learn, like when y'all go to the academy, tell me if I'm wrong, but like, do y'all learn all of do y'all have constitutional law, substantive law, procedural law? Do y'all take criminal justice one-on-one? Do you have to take psychology? Do you learn these things?
No, no. Well, what happens is the problem is you get a very brief like introduction into these things.
Mhm.
One could say you might be exposed to it, but you're not trained in it, and that's a
Mhm.
problem. So there's more emphasis on the physical aspect of policing as there's not enough training. There's not enough
Right.
education on the law, period. There's no
Hmm.
officer in this country can tell me this. I have one of the longest police departments. We were 6 months in. We did damn near 6 months. There's no other police department that is training. When I started, that was going that long. Cats were in like 2 to 3 months and they were out with a badge and a gun.
Did you hear that?
Hmm. I'm sorry. I did the hump back when he said there's not enough training, because if I remember correctly, I said the exact same thing and got told I was wrong. I told I was all kinds of stupid, uneducated, and whatever. Even though there is a website you can go to that tells you what states have how much training, and most of them, he's absolutely right. Absolutely. Not only is there
Mm.
no formal training required in some states, literally before they let you go on the street, right? So they, like, you don't need to have any in-class training. You don't have to have any like a mentorship in the street. Nope, they'll just give you a gun and say good luck. Swear to God, it's horrifying. And he's saying that
Wow.
given that he had 6 months, and he's saying, I don't really feel like that was enough. Like, that should
Right.
tell you something, right? Come on, damn.
Yeah, for the amount of power that, a police officer has, and to be carrying, a substantial um firearm, yeah, I think you would need just a little bit more than a little weekend course, because mistakes
Wow.
can happen. Apparently, you can actually pull out your gun when you meant to get your stun gun. Oh.
Right. I mean, if you think about it, right? So if you just want to go to just med school, right? That's 12 years to be like a podiatrist, right? And just tell people about their feet. But then if you wanted to be a surgeon, that's like an additional 4 or 5 years, right? Because now at this point you're cutting people open, and minute little decisions you make in a fraction of a second could be the difference between life and death. Right? So this is like, a solid almost 20 years of your life before they say, sure, you can operate on people by yourself. 20 years to do surgery, right? But it's unreasonable for us to suggest that cops need more training when some of them get zero training. And I think the longest is 6 months or 8 months in total, including in the street, right? So 8 months and you have a gun and you can just pull it off your waistband at any time and shoot people, right? And then hide behind the "I was afraid for my life" statute. And you only need a maximum of 8 months, on average 60 days. Some zero, literally zero, ever in the lifetime of this cop, right? But doctors, surgeons, we would not allow someone who did their 20 years of surgery training and medical training in another country to come here and operate on us, right?
Right.
Okay, but we require 20 years of American surgery, right? Of Western surgery training in these 3 or 4 countries. Otherwise, you got to be a cab driver. Sorry about it, right? But the cops, nah, they don't need training. What do they need training for? It's fine. Like, what? Like, why are we okay with this?
And these doctors too, think about it. They have to have insurance.
Right.
They make a mistake. Oops, cut your corn. I cut Dante's corn a little bit too deep there. Now my insurance rate goes up.
Right. After 20 years of schooling and people coming to your door willingly and signing up for you interacting with their body willingly, right? Whereas in this cop could just cross my path totally unwillingly, interact with me, again, totally unwillingly, and shoot me, and it's not a crime, right? With zero training, zero insurance, zero anything. Like, again, what is wrong with people that they can't see the problem with this? Like, it's a big problem. It really is.
Yeah. Too much.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
What? Everyone can have a gun and do the same thing. Cops can just initiate force. That's the only difference. No, crew. It's not everyone can have a gun and shoot people. But when people who are not cops have a gun and just shoot people, it's a crime. Do you see the problem? The problem is that you can shoot people, and no matter how wrong it obviously is to everybody, you can punch people in the face, you can break someone's knees, you can scoop someone out of their car on their way to work or whatever and throw them in a loony bin for a week, calling them crazy because they're a Black woman who says that Obama follows her and she has a $100,000 job and the Mercedes she's driving is hers, without even checking it. You can do whatever you want. You can ruin people's lives. You can take people's lives. And it's not a crime. It's not a crime. You're right. Other humans, other lay citizens can also do whatever they want, but when they do it, it's a crime. So there's an automatic check and balance built into that. If you do the crime, you do the time. If I choose to shoot Vonda, I lose my freedom for the rest of my life.
Hey.
That is, sorry, Vonda. I'm just saying. Yeah? And I would be well deserved. I should lose 3 lifetimes for that. But I'm just saying, right? Like, it's a difference, and we have to recognize when there's a massive difference. The cops are not acting just like everybody else. People are going to shoot other people. Yeah, maybe they want to steal something. Maybe they mad at you, whatever, right? But cops are going to come and insinuate themselves in some third-party issue, right? And then just decide whether you live or die today with no consequence, no consequence, no repercussion. Go on in their merry little life. It's not the same.
Hey,
Okay.
John, I'll send you my address so you can send me a Kevlar vest since Ruby's got me marked. She's put an X on my back.
Free Lady V. Free Lady.
That's on your back.
All right. I'll play a little more.
I didn't even understand the law as strongly as I do now when I first started. I was probably 2-3 years in before I started grasping a better understanding on the law and procedures. We're not taught, right? Like
Right.
that's
I've had
law.
officers, I've dealt with officers who know less of the law than me, and I'm not a
Yeah.
police. But
Yep.
I mean, in all fairness, I
Problem.
do have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, but this is my point.
Point.
In saying that, let me tell you something I learned in constitutional law, and I can't even, forgive me, it's late, think of the case study, but I learned in constitutional law about the case that says you can't shoot somebody in their back when they fleeing. It was a case with a teenage boy. I think he was 16 or 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
He was coming from a house where they thought somebody was burglarizing. When they got there, he wasn't in the house, but they saw him hopping over the fence. He was running down the alley. They shot him in his back. And when they caught up with him, they don't know if he was the one in the house, but he had no weapon or nothing, and they killed him. So there was a case law made that says you can't go around just shooting people in their back. So how many officers, if they took constitutional law, would that sink in their mind when they get ready to shoot somebody in their damn back? So this is what I mean, that having that education is going to make them be more accountable for the laws and the rules. They'll have more knowledge, and you will have a lot more knowledge with dealing even with people with mental disorders, because y'all are oftentimes the first ones to show up. But y'all don't know the first thing about what somebody having a psychotic break or having a moment where they're hallucinating. Y'all don't even understand how to deal with that. College would teach you some of that.
I think, and again, that is case law. I can't remember the name of it, but yeah, that case law was actually is what's constantly taught in policing, because that actually created that established the guidelines to shooting a fleeing felon, right? And so the guidelines is that a person who is not a threat to you, not a danger to you, cannot shoot them in the back. Absolutely not. And so they did establish what the guidelines were, because just because a person is running from you does not mean they are not a threat, but they still have to be able to pose a threat to you, either creating, great bodily harm or death to someone else or to the officers. And that is the only exception in shooting a person in the back. And so what ends up happening and you already know this, that you will have officers that will use that. We've seen it recently with the Jalen Walker situation, where officers can get away with it, right? Granted,
but even you said in that one, the way that he kind of turned around, they may have thought that he was going to do something, and they believed he had a gun in the car. So I would even take it back to another case, and I would say Michael Brown. Hands up, shot in the back, didn't have a weapon. You see what I'm saying? Let's even take it back to that one. I didn't even understand how that was allowed to go down even the way it was, because to me, that was a clear case of violation of that case law we're talking about. That was a clear one.
Well, you said Mike Brown, that was the one from Ferguson, right?
Yes, where he didn't have no weapon. He walked away from the police car, and he shot him in his back. It was clear he had no weapon.
See, the thing that the Mike Brown case, that's a long conversation. But I'll say
right. We don't got.
I would say this with that. It's a slippery slope when we talk about citizens who are unarmed and then are shot by the police. I understand why it happens. I don't agree on every situation as why it happens, but I've been in situations personally where a person did not have a weapon, and yet they still posed a threat to me. Now, the issue though is this. I like the Jalen Walker situation, because the problem is the officers all believed he was armed, even though he wasn't armed in that moment when they shot him. And they are saying that his movements and the way he turned in front of them gave the impression that he was drawing a weapon. He took a shooting stance, is what they are saying, right? And we know these things still have to be investigated and have to come out in court, so forth and so on. Cool. But that is a perfect, me personally, even this is why I'm so strong about the Breonna Taylor situation, is I'm big on officers identifying. You have to do your best to identify the threat, identify the weapon before you shoot. But what ends up happening in these situations get chaotic is because it's dark. You can't really see, the movements are erratic. You then incorporate the fear and all the issues
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on.
And
You know what I'm saying? And
I
so,
will say that I get that. I mean, officers are put in those positions. And that's why I guess
right,
I said the Michael Brown case, because I think you can bring all of those things up in the Jalen one. And Michael Brown,
right,
it was daylight. He had
true,
already kind of was at
true,
the car talking, junk,
true.
swung on the officer, whatever, walked away. So he
This
knew.
is
So
true.
I'm just saying,
All right. Any conversation there?
Well,
Hands up, don't shoot.
yeah, I'm sorry. I think, like when it comes to that, even knowing that law, because I mean, from a little kid, I was always under the impression, oh, they can't shoot you in the back, and then every time somebody shot in the back, nothing happens.
Nothing.
I'm like, is that a
Yeah.
law, or is that something we just made up? Because I never saw where they shot someone in the back who was clearly running away. And then when the dust is settled, oh, they didn't have a weapon. They were running away and you shot them in the back. But I always thought you couldn't be shot in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And they were shot in the back. It was so many people shot in the back. And I'm just like, okay, so maybe that's not a law. So even if and I'm going to tell you, I don't have any type of training as a cop, you know. So if I knew that as a freaking little kid, I don't give a good gosh darn. Those cops, they're aware of that too.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that it's just universal that there are certain policies and procedures that are not written down in the books that they follow, and that's just what it is. It's an unspoken code. I don't care what anyone says. The police across the country, they have a code. They have a code. I watched this video and there's this guy who always goes to these different places, and he went to like several different police stations, and he was like, yeah, I'd like to, file a complaint. And the first thing they asked him, well, who are you? Where did this happen? Or what's the name of the cop? They wanted to get all the information. He's like, no, can you just give me the form? Cause I like to form a complaint. He's like, what, who do you want to file the complaint on? They gave him such a hard time. He went to several different police stations, and one of them actually arrested him because they were like, no, you come back here. Who are you trying to, file a report on? Oh no, just
What?
give me the paper. I want the paper so I can file the report against, well, who's the cop? They would not. And it was universal. Unless this was a whole skit, which I don't think it was, they would not give him the information or give him help with filing the complaint. They didn't have a pen, a paper, or nothing. It was first, who are you doing this? Who is this about? They wanted to know who the cop was. They wanted to know where it happened. And he was like, no, I don't want to tell you any of that. Just, can I get the form so I can file my complaint against this officer? And he got ran out of every single police station he went in. And he went to several. And I was just like, oh my goodness. I would never
Wow.
do nothing like that, because I would probably be up under the jail and they still be looking for me. Where's Vonda? She's trying to file a complaint and wouldn't give them the name, but he wouldn't give them name. He wouldn't give them any type of information. But they wanted to find out, well, who is this about? What is this about? You could tell me about it. No pen, no paper, or nothing, but they just want to know verbally, I want you to tell me who is this about?
Right.
Wow. That is
So they can protect
wow.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite astonishing to me. I was just like, wow. I'm like, yeah, they're one of the most infamous gangs in the country.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the issue, right? I mean, to this man's point, I do think that he's been a very very fair and honest and as open as possible. But I don't know if it's naivete or if it's some leftover thin blue line loyalty, that he could say some of the things that he just said, like, yeah, but you listen, I don't know, almost every single one of these videos that we looked at on the news show was them shooting some kid in the back,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And then later on, what do you hear? No charges filed.
Yeah,
So,
you're like, wait a minute, what?
right, it does not seem to matter whether or not something is a law. Does not seem to matter at all. Does not seem to matter if there's case law. Does not seem to matter at all. Because ultimately, if the prosecutor, and this is why we call it systemic racism, if the
Mm-hmm.
prosecutor refuses to file the charges to begin with, then there will be no charges, no matter how many laws have been created. So creating new laws, getting the Mike Brown law on the books, doesn't matter because these laws already exist. They're just never enforced. So the cops have nothing to fear. Them going to school and learning all the case law is not going to change the fact that when they step into the pig pen or whatever they call it, that's what they call it, right? The pig pen? I don't know, the pen, whatever. The pen, like where the cops all hang out
Yeah.
in police stations. I wasn't trying to be derogatory. I was just like, they're trying to call it whatever they call it. But anyway, when they step in there on that first day, they're going to find out, forget everything you ever learned about what you shouldn't do or you're going to get in trouble, because you're not going to get in trouble for any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they're going to see play out again and again and again. And they're going to see far more cases than we ever even hear of, where there are no repercussions for these actions. So why learn about it? That's not the reality of policing.
Right. Wow.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll play a little bit more.
Example, though he had the taser, the situation, the issue I have with him, the officer in that case, is that the officer was poorly trained, couldn't do his job properly. He wasn't able to apprehend a unarmed person who was not actively resisting. He was passively resisting, and after all of that, he felt the need to shoot him in the head. Right, and so there's no justification for that. Though the law, there's a way for him to justify it, though. Right? Do you get what I'm saying? The law still gives officers
But and
room
that's
to
where the anger
maneuver.
comes from, I think,
I
from
agree.
the black community. Because let me tell you something. This is another reason why I hate comparing black on black crime with the police. Because when we commit crimes, you know what happens to us? We go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they come get us and we go into jail. So
Right.
but the police do this stuff, and they have so many ways that even when they are wrong, you can't explain away every situation. Some
They
of
be
them are
pretty
just
good
what
at it.
they are. And
Yeah.
so, and it's some bullshit. They racist, or they're
Sometimes.
undertrained, or they don't care, or they narcissists, or they white
Mhm.
supremacists. Whatever it is, those cases exist, right? And so, and when those things happen, and then they're able to get away with it, it's like, wow, y'all commit crimes and never pay for your crime. That's the frustration. Because when Pookie and Ray Ray is shooting up the hood, when they catch them, Pookie and Ray Ray going to jail for the rest of their life. Let's stop playing. But Officer Whoopty Wham is going to shoot somebody in this prison, in this precinct, and then he gonna go right over to the next precinct, Tamir Rice, and go and get him another job. And when it's clear that he is not equipped to have this job. And so that becomes the frustration. I think when we compare the two, that's
Yeah.
the thing. Stop comparing it, because criminals go
Mm-hmm.
to jail. Police officers commit crimes and they're never called the criminals they are.
I think I will agree. I'll give a little pushback and say that the difference, though, is that we're talking about a profession.
Mm-hmm.
So because it's a profession, it's a job, it has to be examined differently. But I will say this,
Crime
though.
is a profession. It's plenty of people's jobs.
I swear I was going to say
Facts.
that though.
That's true. That's true.
It's called
I,
organized
I,
crime.
yeah, yeah. You know what happens is what ends up happening is that they officers do have a lot of leeway. They do. I mean, because the job is law enforcing, and then a part of that job is using force and sometimes deadly force. So they have to examine to ensure that the force is justifiably reasonable. To your point, though, there have been cases where officers have abused the force to a point where it was criminal. And then they were able to make excuses to circumvent around punishment. And that is what I agree is also part of the problem. And I also agree with you. And a lot of times it's officers who aren't doing their job properly. They were lazy, sometimes just grossly negligent or flat out criminal. And they have been able to use certain talking points to defend their actions. And I agree with you. That's what a lot of people don't like. I don't like that
feared for my
either.
life.
It's one of the issues I have with the Breonna Taylor situation. As we know, that was all fucked up from top to bottom. And so I have a lot of issues with that. And I still fight people and other officers over that to this day about that case. And it's so funny now that all this stuff is just now starting to come out. And I've been saying how corrupt those officers were, or who or how many officers that are involved behind that, said everything about that was wrong. And so, but one day people are going to look back at my videos and be like, he was before his time. You know what I mean? When Vox dropped that video about what was that? The Kentucky Police Department, or I can't remember the name of the police, the one with Breonna Taylor, but Louisville, I think Louisville Police Department. And they were interviewing people who had their drugs stolen and money stolen. Now, the problem is, the reason why these corrupt officers exist is because drug dealers can't tell on themselves. It's the perfect scheme, right? So as a drug dealer, what are you going to say? Hey, the officer took, about, what I mean? 3 pounds, he took an ounce.
Because even if you get arrested, what you gonna do? Claim more time? It wasn't 2 pounds. It was actually 10 of them,
That's right.
and I had, 50,000 under the mattress in drug money. Like, they're not gonna say that. You're right.
Absolutely. I had a case one time. I'm gonna say this in closing. It's sad, but it's crazy. I had a case where a drug dealer was shot, and he was in the passenger seat of the car. They were doing their deal inside the car at the gas station, and they robbed him, shot him behind the seat. So the dude, I can't even remember, but the guy was behind him in the passenger seat. He shot through the passenger seat and shot him it hit him in his lower back and then one in his buttocks, right? So when I showed up, he's on the ground, he's just bleeding. He's like, man, they got me. Now, mind you, this brother, Rolex, clean outfit, shoes. This is back when people was wearing Jabot jeans and stuff. It was like $200, $300 pair of jeans back then. But anyways, I don't even think they sell Jabot anymore.
I had one pair.
Yeah. I had
that
no
was all
pair.
I could afford.
This was expensive. So he was shot. He was shot twice, and they pushed him out of the car, right? And so he lived. But I'm talking to him, and his story's just not making sense. And I'm like, bro, what happened? Yeah, they got me, man. I said, well, what they steal? Because I'm seeing you still got your jewelry on. You still got your wallet. You still got the Rolex. You got this. And I'm trying to, what they take from you? Now I can smell the weed on them. And I knew what it was. And eventually he's like, all right, man, listen, officer, man, they got me, bro. I said, what you mean they got me? Man, they got my stuff. I said, what stuff you talking about, man? The stuff, bro. You know what I'm talking about. I said, they got stuff like that. Yeah, he didn't want to tell it, And this is before we didn't have cameras back then. There was no cameras yet. And so I just laughed. I'm like, man, I said, bro, what? They robbed you? He said, yeah, man, they got me. He said, bro, I know where them niggas stay at, so let me give you the information. He was ready because he's like, man, they weren't supposed to rob me. I've only had 2 cases where drug dealers have actually called the police and reported the robber. Like, they knew him. Why? Because it was like, this is my homeboy set me up. And what the criminals think that you're not going to tell on me because you're a drug dealer too,
right?
But nah, some of them brothers be like, nah, hell with the streets, bro.
Just like the women robbed the men and they set them up. They think they finna get them. They like, well, he thought he was finna get a prostitute. He ain't tell him I robbed him for 10 G's out his wallet.
Yes, listen, I've had those too.
Yeah, they call the police. Yes, they do.
Yeah, and I had a guy, he thought he was gonna get him a little menage a trois, right? At the club, he was throwing all the money. The sister was like, oh, I'll go home. I'll go with you. Where you going? To this hotel. One took him and finessed him in the bathroom, loving up on him. And the one in the bedroom, guess what she did? She opened up the hotel door and she walked out, and the little Goonies came in, robbed him, took everything. And he telling me as I'm interviewing him, because they took his wedding ring. hey, Officer Daly, can you when my wife shows up to pick me up, can you just tell her I got robbed at the gas station? I was like, yeah, I got you, bro. I got you. Wife show, oh my God. Oh, Tyrone, are you okay? I see Tyrone thought he was gonna get two women that he met at the club, and they robbed his ass in the hotel, man. Just let you know, you need to go and get checked. You know, dirty big Tyrone out here gets you hemmed up out here in these streets. Why? Because again, at the end of the day, I can't respect no man who does that. You know what I mean? I'm gonna tell it real. You did all that. Now you calling your wife to come save you after you put yourself in that type of man. Please. But anyways, I got stories for days. But yeah, I've seen it all.
Next thing I wanted to say.
All right. I'll leave it right there.
So,
And you, mhm.
and I don't blame cops for being unable to frame a lot of these discussions without falling into the criminal aspect, right? It's kind of like when you have like the men, every conversation turns into what black women ain't doing, or women, every conversation turns into how black men are dusty. And it's like, why can't you keep the conversation for a second, right, on what the police are doing when it's not, involving the criminals, right? Because, like, for example, the no knock raid. Let's extrapolate on Breonna Taylor. That's the one everyone paid attention to. But any countless. I mean, after that, they did the same thing in the same Minneapolis, right, and killed Lemire Locke. He wasn't the person they were looking for either, right? And declined to prosecute. The same place. Like, this is the problem is, right, is that, I mean, or how many times they have done this whole no knock warrant thing or whatever, raiding houses, right? And they've raided the wrong home and then killed someone while they were raiding the wrong home. Not even like that person doesn't live there anymore or whatever. No. It was always the wrong home. If someone had read the warrant correctly, they would have seen that they're at 309 and they need to be at 306. And they didn't even, they're in a black neighborhood, so they don't care. They don't need to be careful with the numbers. They don't even have to make sure they're at the right house before they raid the wrong house and kill a sleeping child in that wrong house, and then no one gets charged for it, right? Like, I think that the problem is because we can always so easily shift every conversation to the criminals, right? Then in a way it makes society care less, because then we go, yeah, but you're a criminal. It's easy come, easy go. Oh, charge it to the game. Oh, you got what's due to you. You're a criminal anyway, right? But when we do that, we forget that these behaviors, right, these negative, toxic, corrupted behaviors that we see from the cops and from the police departments and from the justice system are not just affecting criminals, right? And this, I don't really care. I don't have to be accountable. I don't have to be careful. It's not the fact that it's affecting criminals. It's the fact that it's affecting everybody. It's the fact that some grandmother can be chilling in her house with her sleeping granddaughter. The cops could come bursting in. She's terrified. She's not a criminal in any way, shape, or form, and they could murder her sleeping child or grandchild. Or that a mother can be playing video games, or an auntie can be playing video games with her nephew, right? And then someone could do a welfare check because she had her front door open because she's airing out her damn house, and they can sneak into the backyard without saying a damn word to her, right? And then shoot her when she gets a gun on her own property because there's people lurking in her backyard. There's a problem here, right? Like,
Extremely.
there's a problem.
What I'm not getting is the department that handles the searches. If I'm looking for Mr. Anderson, okay, let's put everything in a row because we want Mr. Anderson. We don't want, why would we want to make any mistakes? We got to we got to find out the time, the place. We got to get our team together. We got to put something together as far as how we're going to do this. Let's case the place out. Is there back doors? Is there several different entrances? What floor? All these type of things. So I don't get why the investigation isn't thorough before you go for Mr. Anderson. That's what I never get. And I'm with you on the accountability. It's like, oops, made a mistake, and then they start blaming the person that's been injured or taken out. And I'm with you on that. It just switches to the person and not the police. I'm with you on
Mhm.
that.
Yep.
That is crazy. I mean, and in my opinion, I don't know how it runs, but I would think if the department is investigations or tactical unit or whatever the name of it is, that's all you do. So do that correctly, do that right. That you
Right.
get paid, I think, extra um, to bring Mr. Anderson in because that's the person you're looking for. That's your target. So
Right.
just do it right.
Mhm. Right. I mean, especially, I don't know how many people need to die, erroneously, right? And this no knock warrant thing for them to re-examine what the hell they're doing, because the amount of innocent people that have died by
Yes.
this no knock warrant thing, and part of it is why they're doing the no knock warrant to begin with, right? So you're putting it into people's heads, right? Without first, again, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, and making sure you're actually even at the right goddamn door, that the person you're looking for is really at that door, so on and so forth. But fine. But what you've done is you've told the SWAT team, right, that it's incredibly dangerous. If this person knows we're here, all of our lives are going to be at risk or over. They're that dangerous. That's why we can't knock, right? It's that scary to serve a warrant, right? So now it's the police expectation, right? In there, it's just a bunch of dangerous people with machine guns, basically, right? It's the most dangerous place in the world. And it's not, of course, right? But that is the expectation you've lauded on them. Now, the crazy thing is, he's right. There's darkness, flashbangs, this, that, whatever. Okay. But the amount of sleeping people they've killed in these situations
Right.
is is
Yeah.
just, come on. It was sleeping old people, like senior citizens, sleeping children. It's again astronomical. Because like one would be too much, 10 would be too much, but it's way more than that. Like just in the last 10 years, it's way more than that. And that's a problem. There's a fundamental problem there with the system, and the fact that when they're doing something and it fails to this percentage level,
Hmm.
that they don't reevaluate and maybe come up with new terms or a new way of doing things. Like, okay.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I found information from the nonprofit. I'll put it in the chat room, and you guys can check it out at your leisure.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, you know, I'm glad someone is trying.
Right.
It's going to take a lot of people, men, but it's going to take a lot. And it's going to take people that's going to care to get something done. Of course, everything small starts off small, but it grows, you know. If you could just this particular neighborhood, if you could just start with this block, then maybe 2 blocks, then three
Mm-hmm.
blocks, just something. So I'm glad to have run across this channel to find a gentleman that is caring, that
Mm-hmm.
has experience, level head, and it's something that I can get behind. So I'll look forward to checking out more of his content and maybe even having this discussion because I would love to check out some of the testing. Maybe we can do something live on air with the testing and see what the results are.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be great. And especially the conversation. I could just imagine the conversation behind how we test. Because I know I'm not the best test taker, so no telling what mine are say. And I would just laugh at it. Whatever it comes out, they say, "Oh, don't look at, don't get too close to her after 8 p.m." If that's
Right.
what it says, then hey, maybe that's what you need to do. But I'm just surprised, I'll be surprised at what it says. And I think it'll be an interesting thing. So if you can find something, maybe we can do that before I close the channel in December. So we can do that together to be fun. I'll post it to let people know. It won't be a psychic reading, but it'll be a psychological reading.
There you go. Well, I think this was very refreshing having Officer Daly's opinion. I've known some cops before, and just by his attitude and his take, because I mean, Michi, she didn't agree, with everything he said, and
Mhm.
he didn't agree with her, but the way he was able to explain to her, well, you know what, there's a difference, this is why that is, and it kind of opened, the understanding, because if you're not a cop, if you're not a police officer, there's a lot of things you don't know, but in our minds we feel like we know how it should work. And then when you're talking to someone who's not, spewing off a bunch of arrogance, or I know it all, you need to shut up type thing, it really makes the conversation flow a lot better. He would
Yeah.
be somebody, I would want to ask a question to. There are certain people you don't even want to say anything, because they're going to tell you how stupid you are, or no, it's not like that, and it's like, okay, well, I don't want to talk to you. I mean, it's just his whole delivery, his whole demeanor. He seemed, very, wanting to help, and wanting to, spread understanding.
Right, of what he has experienced in his opinion. And
Right.
I think it was great. They really captured me, and I listened to him like, gotta check this guy out and listen to him. So I really enjoyed the conversation tonight. Good to hear someone else mention the training, because Ruby drilled it in last week, and we have someone that actually has the um, lifestyle, or have had the lifestyle experience in that profession, that repeats and says the same thing.
Mhm.
They all they
Right.
look at is the strength and say, "Here's your gun, here's your badge. See ya. Get on
Right.
out of here."
Mhm.
Mhm. Right.
Wow.
And like I said, again, it's not even, first of all, and I think a big thing is, and they didn't really address this, which I think is the biggest thing at all. I mean, they address the fact that there is no accountability, there's a lot of secrecy, no one wants to be open. That in and of itself is the answer. It's literally the only answer, actually. Um, because even doctors don't get to work under some veil of secrecy. They have a board, right, that you can, when you have an issue, right, you report this doctor, that one report, it doesn't have to be hundreds of them, one report is reviewed by the medical board, the whole board of people. And then those hearings are public, right? So you can go look up any doctor, you can go and look up any of these proceedings, and you can see how many complaints have been made against the doctor, what the verdicts were, da 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 da,
Hmm.
right? So even there, right, there is way more accountability while this doctor is or moving, not because of education in what their legal rights are or obligations or whatever, right? But because they are well aware of the fact that a decision they're going to make right now, they are going to be held accountable for tomorrow, right? They even show us um, for the internal kind of stuff, which is normally really for med students predominantly, but like on Grey's Anatomy, right? So they show you the M&M, right? The morbidity and mortality conference. And this is a stage where, yeah, that's private. It is private, but these other doctors will tear you a new one for your decisions, right? And it's not that they're insulting you, they're just asking you common sense, critical thinking questions about every single little teeny tiny decision you make. And you have to be able to stand up and give detailed, precise answers and justify yourself. The public doesn't get to hear it, fine. But the fact that you know you're going to have to do it, the fact that you are called in to regularly do it every time a patient dies, that even if they know the cause of death, it wasn't technically your fault or what, you know, that's a huge deal. The police don't have accountability towards anyone. They literally don't, right? And that, I think, is the craziest thing. They can lie to their captains or just be a little secretive about it. They toe the company line, feared for my life, and that's it. That's all you need, right? They have union reps, right, that represent them. They shoot someone, 10 seconds later, they have a union rep, boom, don't have to say nothing to nobody for days, right? Okay, while they formulate their story. They don't have any insurance. They don't have any accountability. There's no accountability towards the public, even though they are apparently public servants who are called to protect and serve. So you can say law enforcement all you want. No. It's still protect and serve, right? You're still a public servant, but yet you're accountable to nobody. You're not even accountable to each other, right? Because now imagine they had to do an M&M the same way that doctors had to do an M&M, right? Imagine they had to do that. Forget all of the other stuff. Forget schooling. Forget all that. Just every time they made a decision that had a bad outcome, they have to stand there with the whole precinct grilling every step they made from beginning to end. Well, why did you get out of the car like this? Why was your hand here? Why da-da-da-da-da? Right? That's how you teach people critical thinking skills, right? Because you force them to have to answer for it. And then when they can't come up with a good answer, or what the answer they came up with gets torn apart and people call them out, don't you think it would have been better if da-da-da-da-da, right? A rapid fire for a whole day of everyone just holding you to account. You know what you're not going to do next time? The same thing. Just even on the job training to that extent, right? On the job accountability to that extent, accountability to an insurance company, because your insurance could be cheap or damn near free, but every time you make one of these bad decisions with a bad outcome that hurts everybody that they have to pay out for, guess what? Your premiums go up. And it's entirely controlled by your bad decision making or your good decision making, right? Like, it's actually not as hard or as pervasive as we make it seem like or feel like, to get real, immediate, and like complete changes, right? All you have to do is institute a couple little things, right? And that's going to make a huge change. Within 1 year, we will see a world of difference. A world of difference. All the captains, yeah, when this captain made this bad call, guess what? They have these video conferences of captains all around the city, state, country, whatever. Again, holding their feet to the fire, even if we never get to hear about it. You know what I mean? Like, they just have no accountability. They don't answer to anyone. And that's why I said they are a vehicle of absolute power. And every cop, from the lowest rung to the top of they have absolute power. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's what it is. All you got to do is add in checks and balances and add in some personal accountability with the insurance thing. There you go.
Right.
Well, I'm going to end on shouting out Dr. Gautam Gupta. He's somewhere in India hiding with a dot in his forehead, enjoying the $25 billion that he has defrauded Medicaid, and he is enjoying himself somewhere and retired.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
25 million?
Yeah, they still looking for him, and they'll never find him. FBI, most wanted. But great conversation, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Very good conversation. I want you guys to stay safe. As you see outside, the leaves are falling to the ground. It is getting darker earlier. The kids are out and about. Public transportation is crowded. The streets are crowded. Everything's crowded out there. So be safe as you can. And until we meet again, peace.
Peace out, family.